Hello, my name is Puffin, and today I'm here to give you a walkthrough through the Victa War Memorial. Victa was contested throughout the entire war, but it was only really held by the colonials in the last week after a group of solos managed to hold it. And despite that, it was still the site of the very last Warden offensive of the war, where their regiment was shattered. They had nothing left. They made a last-ditch attempt to attack Jade Cove with a line of about 20 tanks, but they were all destroyed. Here we have the Victa War Memorial entry sign in front of the Victa Town Hall that was upgraded by me, along with the safe houses and garrison houses. My friend Spooky, who I served with on this front, kept it running and upgraded. It wasn't wasted. It took a lot of time and a lot of effort, but what we did manage to get Victa in a spot that it was safe from enemy and partisan attacks, and also a viable frontline depot. Now, this is Spooky's story. Story of a new player, loading into abandoned ward, learning Logi, before he goes to Akimio Isle. Of course, this was lost. And he ended up getting to Victa. It's held by me, Beep Boops, Sedatives, and Spooky, and some others that we couldn't get a hold of. Of course, USMC and Bawa also helped us defend and take Jade Cove in the initial engagements. And shout out Spooky and Viking Tacos. Here was the site of a petrol station. There were 2 petrol tanks. One here, and the other next to it. This is where most of the falchions and everything else that were launched went. Over here, along this road, is the Grand Victa Depot. There was a train line that ran through here, all the way around to the depot, and then out of Victa. It was a very large loop. Trains came here to drop off massive amounts of artillery, and the only reason we were able to hold Jade Cove was because Victa was able to hold. The depot was a key part of that. And of course, many falchions, Nemesis, Spathas were dumped in Victa's depot as well, and they were used to great effect by, well, random players, not even those that were in regiments. Every tank helped. Of course, when the train came through, it was difficult to do anything, really. And when they were doing that, they had to roll back here through the mud. It was very slow, and there was a lot of AI blocking it at the time, but they did manage to get back to the main road. Now, this main road here, as you can see, that's the town hall, leads back to Safe House Lane and Factory Road. This is the safe house. It was only used once during the Long Hook landing, as they never actually pushed past Jade Cove, but when the Long Hook landed, it was quickly realized this was something good to have. Now over here is the Public Materials Factory. This was made by me, and representing Fanny, and it was just a public materials factory. Liquid transfer station, small assembly station, petrol power plant, and materials factory with an assembly bay upgrade. Made barbed wire, metal beams, sandbags, and MSUPs, all the front needed. And it also managed to make sure that we were able to hold this area. Plus, we saved a destroyer with it. We nearly saved a battleship, but it got torped because we didn't have gunboats, unfortunately. Over here's Partisan Beach. Many wardens landed here, and many failed. Even some high-ranking wardens landed here and ambushed me while I was building my industry with a pistol, and I managed to kill them with my pistol when they had actual equipment on them. And another time, they drove in with a truck full of, well, alligators and flamethrowers, and they died to the AI. I suppose they assumed we didn't have much. But the partisans were never able to do much damage. Speaking of the Long Hook, when it landed, only a few infantry managed to actually land. They killed a single wall guarding the safe house, the garrison houses, and some pillboxes, but they never actually breached the city walls. This is where the last Warden attack of the war was shattered. Storm's tank assault, I assume it was affiliated with them. The Longhook came here after the assault was shattered, and they made an attempt to Victa to cut off Jade Cove supply lines. It failed, and we managed to cripple it at sea with 4 falchions coming back as a QRF after attempting to QRF the 20 tanks that were killed by infantry at Jade Cove, and it was crippled on land, and a battleship gave it a coup de grace. USMC's battleship. In this shipyard, so much fuel, so many shipping containers were brought here. Powered the tanks that would attempt to take Huskalo, which ended in failures, unfortunately. But it also kept the factories fueled, and kept the many, many heavy and super heavy tanks that we were able to have here. And as the war ended, we managed to take artillery shelter 2 minutes before the war ended, and traveling colonial press corps crew interviewed victims here, including me, and they celebrated the end of the war with us in the safe house. Nice group of boys. Now, if you'll come with me to follow the long, long, lodgy road to Jade Cove. When I was serving here, I managed to resupply it almost entirely by myself, running 1,000 needed supplies, hundreds of artillery shells and trucks. Here's the free city of Victa marker, Bane of Wardens, savior of ships and land of artillery. Here's the long, long road to Jade Cove. Thanks to the upgrade station we built in Victa, we were able to get multiple Sisyphus and haulers and active at all times, along with spear tips to deter partisans. It was a long road, but it felt a lot shorter than it really was. Sisyphus had a habit of going incredibly fast, and when that happens, well, you can blow past all the AI. Now, not to say there was hostile AI here in spades, but there were a couple partisan garrisons that were thrown up at a couple of times that we had to drive through, in addition to withering artillery fire. And if you look to the right of the road, there was a factory here. It was a ill-advised location for a factory, as it was within a 150 range, and it was destroyed about 10 to 30 minutes after it was rebuilt every time. Over here's the seaport. It was never actually used for logistics. We never controlled the river enough. But when we repaired it, we managed to steal a lot of Warden tanks and equipment that we used to bolster the war effort. And here's Partisan Landing. They tried about 4 or 5 partisan landings here with no armor but a lot of infantry, and they were cut down in minutes every time. It was brutal. And over here is the high water point of Storm's final 20 tank push. There was a single push gun, no tanks. They were arriving from Victa and would have been able to engage had the Storm tanks held out, but they didn't, and those that survived the infantry and pushgun onslaught were, well, too scared to continue pushing, and they ended up retreating. Here's the first artillery ridge over here. Many, many 120s were launched by battery of about 4 to 5 Coronades. They definitely kept the Wardens at bay. USMC sunk many ships in defense of Jade Cove, and they also took a point in Stone Cradle, which was the 30th of 29 victory points we needed. This honors the Honey, it's 11 p.m. There was a map post, because we traded Jade Cove every day at 11 p.m. So there was a map post that ended up having around 800 upvotes that just simply said, Honey, it's 11 p.m. Time to trade Jade Cove. And over here is the Historical Site Committee's former truck site. I was the one who moved it. Don't worry, it didn't get stolen. This isn't a look upon my works. Over here is Barbed Wire Beach. This entire ramp was coated in multiple layers of barbed wire. One individual got stuck in it for an hour, but at least it kept the partisans out, right? Around the back, not much happened. There was some logistics and a small amount of factory work happening down at the salvage mines, but the partisans never managed to penetrate back here. Here's the Jade Cove Hospital. Made thousands, if not tens of thousands of shirts to keep Jade Cove supplied. We'll go to the town hall one more time. We can see the artillery terrace over here. Now, there were no trees here at the time, but the artillery here pounded the wardens day and night. They not lost, they used around 6 pallets of artillery, all of which were put to good use. Here's the sign that Raposas dedicated to me, my fellow comrade, where I single-handedly supplied Jade Cove for a period of around 3 hours when nobody else was doing logi. I was the source of most of the frontline logi to Jade Cove, and I also ran a lot of midline logi from Origin and other backline depots to Victa in order to keep it well supplied. This ridge was the source of a lot of partisan raids. While none were successful, they certainly tried, and I myself killed many of them. Here's the West Bridge, which, despite being of less tactical importance, due to it not being near the mortar house or the town hall, as they could simply kill the town hall from the ramp if they managed to cross there, a lot of Warden partisans chose this bridge to cross through. It was also far harder to retake, as the ridge up top made it impossible to actually attack from should there be people in place. This mortar house was loaded by Raposas and another one, and a single gunner, I believe he had a Japanese or Chinese name, raining down hell on the wardens every time they tried to rebuild the bridge. This bridge was the site of over 20,000 deaths total, and 10,000 for our side at least, and 7,000 at least on the warden side. Not to mention, rebuilding was a controversial topic too. There was an 11-hour argument that happened after someone fixed the bridge, and it broke comms in the region for that entire time. It was a shit show, to say the least. Over here, the snipers' houses. Of course, no garrison house was unscorched here by the end of the war, and this was a dilapidated lot full of snipers, and every time they cleared them, they almost came back immediately. Over here we have the Jade Cove Memorial Church, which was usually empty, but some medics took refuge in it. Up here is the safe house, where there's said of a 3-hour crash out after a member was told to chill out. Now, he was not happy about being told that. So he crashed out fairly heavily. The second safe house was not that much interesting, but here we had the Great Sandbag Wall, where it was a wall of sandbags, a step to shoot from, and a line of tank traps and barbed wires they couldn't get through. This was essential to defenses. Stopped multiple tank pushes and allowed us to hold this side for hours. And past here, well, that's where the hell trenches were. A bunch of tier 2 trenches that nobody ever filled in or cleared, so there were always someone from the opposing side in there. Now, the front of the city was subject to some of the heaviest fighting, as this is where all the wardens came through. This trolley held off 11 tanks, the push gun, and infantry AT for over 8 hours before we got hit by artillery. And this plaza held the fight of 50 wardens and colonials, and they contested until 7 tanks arrived. Over here, we had a huge amount of warden defenses that allowed them to breach into the plaza. As you can see, there was a replica bunker back there. And this field was the site of multiple bunker bases built by wardens and colonials. None of them lasted more than a day, even with good defenses. And they were oversupplied and ended up becoming a black hole for logistics. And whenever they were lost, everything was never recovered, and some of those bases had 5,000 BMATs and hundreds of shirts in them. And a warden named Cabby held the green advance here, a colonial, for over 30 minutes, getting dozens of kills. Here's the gate to Jade Cove, the entrance to the city proper. Many armored infantry engagements were fought here, but neither side was able to actually hold it. Now, there were skirmishes all across, up and down these hills. It was held by wardens for the entire war. We were able to take Sickle Hill, well, this portion of Sickle Hill, this hilltop, but never the rest of the hill that led to the Scarp of Ambrose. And our final spot on our tour is where the Monte Cassio Fight Club is. This is Sickle Hill. I spotted the artillery that killed it, and this is the farthest point we got to in the war. Before the naval landing landed at Buckler Sound, of course. Even when we cleared it, we were held by the concrete. I was reinforced by howitzer garrisons. Never forget the fight at Jade Cove and Victa. This was the source of many clips, so much content, and a lot happened. Never forget.